Alrighty. Happy New Year and a happy whatever holiday you celebrated over the past couple of weeks. It was a good little break, but we're back now and it's time to get into some 2023 fun with a brand new video. I went through my list of content to see what videos actually did pretty well because I wanted to start off 2023 with a video that's in the same vein of the videos that do well to kind of get a good jump start on the new year. And my review videos seem to do pretty good, so I thought, hey, let's do another one of those. So today we're going to be doing a review of an N64 controller that you can go buy brand new off the shelf right now. And that controller is a Hyperkin Captain. Now the Captain is going to be a much harder sell than the third-party GameCube controllers, where OEM GameCube controllers were like 50, 60 bucks, and a third-party controller was like 15. OEM N64 controllers are a lot more reasonable. Getting one of these used off of eBay is gonna run you about 25, 30 bucks. And the Captain, brand new off the shelf, is 23. Or at least that's what I paid for it a couple months ago when I got mine. But let's jump over to the table, we'll unbox this, and we'll talk a little bit about it to see if it's actually worth your money. Alrighty guys. We have us here, our Hyperkin Captain. Now I peeled the sticker off, but as I mentioned before, this cost me $23 brand new. And obviously I've been into this package already, but I figured I could show you guys what exactly you get whenever you buy this controller. Spoiler alert, it's not very much. There we go. I opted for the gold color. It does also come in your regular gray. I believe it comes in black. It comes in a lot of the standard like N64 controller colors, and then it also has a line that's very similar to the N64 Funtastic colors. I'll leave a link down below to where you can go see for yourself the different variety of them. Now probably the first thing you'll notice, and the first thing that I noticed whenever I pulled this out, was just how damn long the cable actually is. It says it's a 10-foot cable, and I did not measure it, but it is definitely much longer than the original N64 controller cable is. Let's actually take a look here. So there is the original N64 length, and then we have all that much extra cable right there. You have probably about 2.5 more feet of room to get from your N64 to wherever you're sitting to where you have a good view of the television. Gives you a little more option of stretching out your setup. The next thing you'll notice is that the Hyperkin Captain is actually a decent little bit bigger than the OEM N64 controller. I'm sure you've already noticed it, how the right shoulder on this controller is actually a good bit lower down than the left shoulder on this button, even though the bottoms here are lined up. That is a very noticeable difference whenever you have it in your hand. As an adult, I've always thought that the N64 controller felt just a little bit small, and the Hyperkin Captain actually does feel much, much better in adult hands than the original N64 controller. Now that's not that much of a difference, so if you are very familiar with the N64 controller and you're very comfortable with it, then that might still be your preferred method of play. It is not that drastic of a difference, but it is very noticeable, and in my personal opinion, it's actually preferable. Now the next big difference is in the actual sticks themselves. As you can see, the Hyperkin controller is a bit more like a GameCube stick, where it's like a roller, where it's like a ball on top of an analog joint with a rubberized cap on the stick, whereas the N64 controller is more of just a post that goes straight down to its base. The lock-in of the angles you can actually feel better on the OEM controller, whereas the Hyperkin controller, it just has cutouts along this base that the stick just rocks into whenever you're wanting to get the proper angles. That being said, the actual movement of the stick does feel slightly better on the OEM controller. It still does feel quite good on the Hyperkin controller. That rubberized top does make a world of difference for traction, because I never really feel like I'm going to worry about my finger slipping off the stick, whereas that was a constant worry on the OEM controller. The stick goes exactly where I tell it to, because I do not feel like I have to worry about my thumb slipping off of it. As far as button feel is concerned, this is going to be where these controllers do differ the most. This might be an instance of this controller just being very old. The spring action of these just has kind of worn down over time. The Hyperkin controller definitely has a good bit more resistance to its buttons than the OEM controller has currently, and I believe it's more so than the OEM controller ever did have. But if you remember from my Circa GameCube controller video, I actually do like that more resistance, as I do enjoy that feedback I get from these buttons being harder to press. And that goes for every button on the controller. The face buttons, the left, right, the D-pad particularly, and the Z button on the back. All the buttons do feel harder to press than they do on the OEM controller. And I want to talk specifically about that D-pad because it not only is harder to press, it is significantly harder to press. If I had to give this controller a legitimate ding, it is in the resistance of the D-pad. It just feels like this would get tiresome relatively quickly, whereas the OEM D-pad is a good bit mushier, but it is so much easier to actually press than the Hyperkin one. Having said that though, there's not a lot of N64 games that use just the D-pad, so if that's something that you can deal with on occasion, then it's not a gripe that I feel you should ultimately care about. Speaking of the buttons, we can't have a proper controller review without giving you guys a sound test, so we'll do that right now. It should be noted that this controller does have the expansion slot on the back for the memory card, the rumble pack, and the transfer pack. It does work, however, I would like to note that it is a little loose. Say you put the rumble pack in this controller, you get it down and it does lock in place, but as you can see, there is a bit of play in this, whereas on the OEM controller, that is non-existent. This is a very good, snug, proper fit. And that little bit of play goes for the memory card as well. It gets in there, it does lock in place, it does not come out, but as you can hear it, it does have a little bit of wiggle. I've not encountered that to actually be a problem with the games, but it should be noted that that definitely is present. I want to actually compare the wires for you all, because these cheaper controllers can tend to have that be one of the places that they skimp, is that they make these wires really thin and flimsy, but I don't feel like Hyperkin actually faulted here. Now, it is a smaller gauge of wire, but it is not that much smaller gauge of wire, which gives me hope that it will be able to hold up in the long run. A lot better than the wire of some of these third-party controllers would hold up. But now I want to talk about what to me would be the biggest gripe of this controller is actually the plug. The plug on the N64 controller, it's not anything super special. It is just a hunk of plastic with the wires inside to make the connection here. And the same goes for this guy. But for whatever reason, the plug, it just feels a little bit cheap. And I feel like the main reason I say that is because when I first plugged this into my system, these little lock things here on the side that actually keep it from slipping out of the system, those actually worked too well. And when I went to pull this out of my console, the housing of the plug here actually separated from the main body, exposing a bunch of the wires and stuff. And I was able to just clip it back into place, and if I'm a bit more careful when I pull it out of the system and actually rock it back and forth instead of trying to pull it straight out, it comes out just fine. Given that I was able to put it back together no problem, it is a small gripe, but it's something that I do feel like I needed to bring up. I gotta admit, guys, I'm surprised with how much I like this thing. Sure, the D-pad might be a little stiff and the plug might not be up to the quality of the rest of the controller, but if I get a new game I want to test, or I'm just wanting to play some N64, I find myself gravitating towards this one over an OEM. Because, as I said before, as an adult, this controller just feels better in the hand than an OEM does. But I'm not the only one here. Have you guys had experience with this controller? What are your thoughts on it? I'd love to hear your take down in the comments below. But that's gonna be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I look forward to diving into 2023 with y'all where they're bringing you a bunch of new content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, y'all. So, take 2. Let's put this thing on hold. We got some battery. And like before,